enjoying.
Andrew,
Yeah.
what's going on with the printing of the new notes? Is this supposed to smoke somebody out? What's going on? Why are we printing new notes?
Why are we printing new notes? Yeah,
Yes.
this one is topical. So there are a number of things, all right? And obviously different aspects of the justification get different levels.
Are they
of
trying to
focus.
get PF guys hiding money to come out?
Wait.
Because that's also on the street.
Relax, man. Relax.
Relax.
You need to build a case. You know,
All right,
like
cool.
part of what I like to try to do is carry everyone along and then not tell them what I actually think, but after having presented the facts, then you can make your own call.
All right, let's
it
go.
also keeps
So let's-
me out
yeah,
of
so
trouble.
let's go. Let's go.
So let's think about this, okay? So at the very foundation, printing notes for any country is not unusual. It's normal, right? So notes are printed all the time. That's why sometimes you show up at the ATM, you pull out some notes and they're very crispy, right? They are brand new notes.
Right.
There is an ongoing process through which currency is replaced, okay? Notes get damaged, they get taken out of circulation, they get enhanced in terms of their features, etc. Okay? So that is
Unusual.
standard. Okay? It is also not unusual to, from time to time, change the actual design of the notes. Right? It's not unusual. There was a time we had polymer notes for 1,000. We had paper ones, if you remember that,
Yes.
plastic ones and whatever. So that's not unusual. It's also not unusual for, from time to time, to change the entire structure of the notes in terms of what's your biggest note, what are the actual denominations, okay? Which is what has happened now, all right? So changing the notes in terms of the structure is not unusual, okay? There are reasons for it, okay? Now it's the reasons that you then interrogate because they signal certain things. We're together so far. All right?
Very much, yeah.
So there is a science through which you determine what is the most optimal structure for the notes that you must have in circulation. Remember, we used to have 50,000 Kwacha notes,
50 pin,
100
yes.
and whatever, right? And we chopped off 3 zeros called rebasing. That was in about 2012. We then ended up with smaller notes. Since then, we've never actually shifted the structure in terms of denomination. Now, from that time to today, so now this is the most discussed aspect of it, the issue of inflation. Okay, that over time, what you can get from the same amount of money has reduced. We all know that, and that has happened because costs are increasing. And in the recent years, costs have been increasing at a quicker rate. Okay, now costs will always increase. Inflation, any economy will expect to have some degree of inflation. It's healthy, all right? And that's why you hear the central bank talk about we have a band, a target of between 6 and 8%. But what you want is low to moderate inflation, controlled. In the recent years, and when I say recent years, we're talking about since when? 2022, 2023, it's been gradually ramping up. It's now at what? 16.7%, heading towards 17%. We once had in, I think 2021, we got to north of the 20s. It then came down. Zambia's inflation is driven by a number of different factors, right? We import a lot, right? So we import, we're dependent on foreign currency. Our kwacha has been weakening. So when we import stuff, the price of those things is going up, right? Progressively. Now, there's reasons why the exchange rate is weakening, right? The economy is obviously being battered at the moment and has been for a while, right? And maybe we need to explore that as well because it's important. You will never be able to treat an ailment if you don't diagnose it properly, right? So what you're dealing with as inflation is a symptom. You need to understand where is it coming from, right? So if you look at that, Zambia first defaulted on what it owed to creditors in November 2020. Zambia, and just before that, we came out of COVID. Then we went to issues with being indebted and challenges that came from there. We had issues with how our mining sector was in decline. In fact, it's only turned around in 2024. So up to 2023, 2021, 2022, 2023, the graph was going down. It has now turned around and is heading back upwards, and it is expected to grow move quite quickly. Add to that now climate change and what that's done for food production, what is done for electricity production. Electricity affects everything, right? You have to run a generator. That's additional costs. The country is having to import power here, $90 to $100 million worth of
And sell power
basis.
to Namibia too.
That's a different. That's a topic for another day. But yeah, they have to do that. But if you look at it in terms of to get on with what's happening, there's a lot which has pushed up the costs. The costs have been pushed up, meaning what you're getting when you take out 100 kwacha is getting less. What that means is that it's now more and more inefficient when you're using cash, right? It's inefficient. You need to carry a lot more cash to do the same things. So the science says then, what is the optimal point? So there are these sort of sweet spots. It's not an exact science, but it is actually an exact science. There's some method to the process and say, okay, for us to continue to sustain this level of transactions and to make it efficient so that also when you're going into the bank, you're not queued for 30 minutes while some guy in front of you has all of his notes counted. We need to restructure there. We need to restructure the notes and the denominations that we have. So that is obviously what is the most discussed issue, because it does signal that the value of the currency has declined. You can't get away from that, right? So that's the biggest deal. You need to understand the why, and I'm sure we may discuss how do you actually fix it. But that's one important reason. That's the most discussed. It signals the most. It's the most contentious about it, because now you have how good are the policies to get the economy back on track, etc., etc. Because you only ever be able to bring your inflation back down or moderate it sustainably if your economy is doing well. Okay,
Right.
So pack. That's one, and that's the heaviest, if we can put it that. If we're putting stuff on a scale. The next thing is, look, over time, the technology for note printing changes, right? The people who have made it their job to counterfeit notes, they are more sophisticated. Since 2012 to now, there's not been a major overhaul of even the design of our currency. So you redesign it, you update it for the latest in terms of security and just general, even durability, all of that, and you bring it up to the modern day, right? So that's another reason why that is happening. In terms of
On that point as well, isn't it easier to have counterfeit notes, especially during the introduction of a new note? Because if Kalenga is only being introduced to the new note for the first time, say this coming month, he will not be able to tell the real note from the fake note.
Well, they have to move quickly. Like if you are doing the counterfeiting.
Yeah, that's my
because
point.
If you listened to the description of what's been loaded in the note to try to make it more secure, it's not basic, right?
I hear you, but how many people do you think, when they receive that, they are gonna go through every single one of the security features?
Not really, but you'll be able to tell, right? And the reality of the situation is, this is where now education comes in, because people need to be educated. Sensitized. What are you looking for? The other aspect, there is something which I thought was quite interesting, that they've actually enhanced the notes to better cater for visually impaired people.
Also, there's Braille.
I don't think it's not Braille, but
which has always been there.
Even the sizes of the notes are different.
Oh, serious?
So I just thought that was quite interesting that they've actually gone to that extent in terms of dealing with that aspect as well. And this one is a bit counterintuitive, but there is a push to use less cash in the economy, right?
Yes.
That move to mobile through the bank, etc., etc. By basically resetting the entire currency in circulation, you have an opportunity to either reduce it, as you are then dealing with what else you have to do, so that you incentivize the use of electronic means, right? Because now you can say, okay, fine, maybe in terms of the notes that will actually be in circulation, maybe we'll drop them 20% and then see how we go from there. We'll see how that works. Then your point, which you were asking, right?
Are they trying to smoke people out? Because word on the
The
street
reality
is
of the situation is also that it's not uncommon. I think Nigeria did it. I think even in Kenya. In fact, those countries, I think they only, if I'm not mistaken, at some point they only changed the largest denomination. So like they fundamentally overhauled it and said, by this point, if you've got cash, you need to trade it in. If you don't, then you lose it. You won't be able to use it. But I mean, if you've got cash that you can account for, then you've got nothing to.
So will this get to a point where you're not able to use your old denominations anymore?
Yes, but there'll be a transition period. I think it's like a
usually
year. It's like a year. No, it's a long
months.
period. It's a long period. No.
Oh,
It's a reasonable period for you to trade in your currency.
Gosh, those people
So if I'm
that
hiding
keep their-
56 million kwacha in
I
the
was
house,
about to say the same thing.
I can easily take
you.
a million kwacha every
Every
week
day, yeah.
for the next 52 weeks. I mean,
But you see what will happen is then the bank will flag and say every day, because remember how this works on the back end is that you've told the bank, I am Kalink. I make 10 million kwacha a month off of the podcast. I hope you do. And this is how it comes in. So if all of a sudden you're now making 20 million, then they'll ask you to explain.
Well, you can spread it over a couple of people. Get 1,000 people
Yeah,
to
so
deposit it into their accounts.
let's just say it becomes harder to do. Yeah, but and let's be honest, right? Like now, especially with mobile money, it might be a lot easier to get money into the banking system, isn't it?
Precisely.
Yeah, because you just go to spread out your money,
Give it to an agent.
30 SIM cards.
Yeah. But you have some work to do, and at some point when it's sort of if the systems work the way they're supposed to, you may have to answer a few questions as to the source. And remember, what happens is that once you get flagged as your transactions are suspicious, then you end up with DC, FIC. They look into those, and then if you need to explain
A
it,
follow-up question to what you say, that obviously if inflation goes up, then the 100 kwacha note that you normally carried is now buying less and less. And so introducing a higher denomination that makes it easier. But why not just fix the inflation?